Very good morning, children. Today in my geography class, I will be starting with a new topic talking about the resources, that what are the causes as well as what can be the various measures for resource development in our country. Children, by now I have explained to you that how the land can be utilized. In the land utilization, we have read that how the people, the ecologists, use the current fallow land as well as the arable land which they require to grow in a piece of land. Now, the question arises that why a piece of land is left barren or uncultivated for 5 years or more than 5 years. What are the conditions, or a simple 5-mark question, what are the causes of land degradation in our country? Children, land degradation. Land degradation basically means that how the resources are degraded. That land which was giving the major potential resources, how with due course of time, how the land has become barren and the resources are minimal or of no use to the humankind. Today, and let me tell you children, the human beings, because of their greedy nature, because of their selfish nature, are the main contributors for land degradation in our country. Today, I will be discussing with you the major causes of land degradation in our country. The first major cause is, which is known for land degradation, is deforestation. You all know by now, you have read in your junior classes also, that land degradation means that when the large amount of trees are cut down on a large scale. Children, you know that the trees' major property is that they hold the soil. With their roots, they hold the soil firmly in the earth. Now, when there is a large amount of cutting of trees, we find that when these trees come out, they degrade the roots of the soil which they were holding. As a result of which, we find that there is land degradation or there is soil erosion in a particular country. The second important part of causes is known as overgrazing. Children, in your previous class, I have explained to you that overgrazing means a piece of grazing basically means a piece of land which is restricted for the animals to graze so that they can satisfy their hunger. Before few years back, there was a land which was known as the permanent pasture land, which was reserved for the animal. But with the growing population, with again the selfish and the greedy nature, we find that there is a limited land for the pasture land. We find because of overgrazing, because of cattle graze, when these cattle graze, when these pasture lands are there, which are with roots, we find where the soil, the roots of these the roots of these plants are there in the land which are holding the soil firmly. When we take out these plants or when we take out these roots, we find that with roots, we find we are uprooting these kinds of pasture land. As a result of which, again the same quality, that we find that the top layer of the soil, which is the soil, gets eroded. Eroded means it gets snatched away, it moves from one place to another. Here, it is very important for me to explain to you soil erosion. Soil erosion is the removal of the topsoil with any agents. The agents can be wind, the agents can be water, or agents can be any other sources. When we talk about the overgrazing, we find that the top layer gets eroded. The eroded means the upper layer, which is the most fertile layer, it moves from one place to another. There can be various agents, we will not be talking about it. But what we talk about here is, which is important, that the top layer of the soil gets eroded, as a result of which we find that there is overgrazing in that piece of land. The third important factor is known as mining. Mining basically means to take out the minerals below the earth crust. Children, when we are digging something from the earth to extract minerals, we find that when we are digging these minerals, we find that the soil which is there, we are extracting just because for our selfish need, when we are extracting the minerals for our economy, we find that when we extract these minerals, the soil gets uprooted. The top layer of the soil, because this is a piece of land, when we dig that land, first of all, the first thing which is affected is the top layer of the soil. As a result of this erosion, several times we have seen that the miners leave the open pits there only in the ground, and they since their mineral work has been completed, we find these open pits are there, which also does not uphold the soil. And this soil is very much important for the conservation of the various resources in our country. The fourth important factor, the causes, is which is known as the over-irrigation. Children, I'll give you a very small example. If it's raining right now, okay, in a week, 1 or 2 days, we find that we are having heavy rains. Now, in a pot which is already, the soil is already quite wet, and if you pour more water, we find that this is a situation of over-irrigation. Over-irrigation means that when you are using different kind of things which are required which is creating excess of water in the plants. The same thing happens with the land also. When you are over-irrigating a particular piece of land, which is for agriculture, you are over-accessing the water. We find that the top layer, which is the fertile layer of the soil, gets eroded. And we find here the coming up of the saline chemicals. Saline chemical means the elements, the salts which are present in that particular area. The last and the very important causes is which is known as mineral processing industries. Children, you know that in our country there is large amount of cement industrial process which emit waste. Now when we are taking out the minerals, we find when we take out the minerals below the earth crust, in the whole atmosphere, we find the coming up of the small fine particles which we can feel, and which we can inhale also. We will feel quite uneasy while breathing. These land deposits, when they are in the air, after some time they get deposited in the land. On the land, and when they get deposited on the land, we find that the land layer which is used for cultivation gets degraded, as a result of which there is the land degradation. Children, these are the important causes of land degradation. Now, the question arises, if the land is degraded, what can be the various measures to conserve this degraded land? The various measures, this is also a very important question. The various measures to overcome this land problem is, number one, afforestation. Afforestation basically means to grow more and more trees. When we will grow more and more trees, we have read that in degradation, along with the trees, the soil gets uprooted. But when we will grow the trees, that is afforestation, the soil will be in that area only. The trees will be able to hold the soil, as a result of which there will be the first important factor for the soil conservation. The second important factor for soil conservation is the management of grazing land. Children, I am discussing the points. One, land degradation causes versus the measures. Children, when we specify the area, you remember in my last class I said permanent pasture land which was fixed. Now the area is not fixed. Any land which is they grow the land, they grow the crops in one piece of land. After few years, when the soil loses its fertility, it is unfit for growing of the crops. And we find there, what we find? We find that there is soil fertility and it is unfit and becomes a barren land. And then this land is left for the pasture land. When we will specify the area that in this piece of land, this will be a permanent pasture land, we can manage grazing land. And that will be the measure for the conservation of our soil. The third important factor regarding the mining is that we can regulate the mining. Now, you all know that mining is a need of an hour. It is an important factor for contribution of our economy. When we will regulate the mining, when we will have the safe mining, we can contribute to our country also without degrading the soil of our country. The next important point is over-irrigation. I told you, whenever there is excess of water in the plants, various measures can be adopted like the drip irrigation, sprinkles, etc., which is a kind of a tube in which there are several mouths which are moving in a clockwise direction, and it is sprinkling the water. It is giving the water in the less amount as compared to the direct going of the water through the pipes. This measure can be adopted for demeaning the over-irrigation in a particular piece of land. Apart from that, children, we find that there can be growing of shelter belts. Growing of shelter belts basically means in a piece of land, outside that land boundary, we can grow various plants. These trees, when they grow, they will hold the soil firmly, which will be as a result of which, whenever there is heavy rain, whenever there is rainfall, whenever there is wind, we find that the land will be, with these trees, the land will be able to hold the soil firmly, and there will be no soil erosion. The last and not the least, the last measure can be, we can grow thorny bushes around them. When we will grow plants all over the areas, especially the thorny bushes, they will break the force of the wind and they will be able to have the soil erosion and will stop the soil erosion. Hope you are quite clear with the understanding of the causes as well as the measure for soil erosion. Thank you.